Okay, we're up. Oh, boy, so this was a pretty big build up this week. I mean, I feel like we've been building up to this battle on the wall for like what is it, 4 seasons now? I mean, because
Since
there
the
really hasn't
beginning.
been since episode one. I don't know. There's apparently this is actually turning into a fairly polarizing episode. So
Do we know what this one like cost compared to
oh
like Blackwater or something?
oh I don't know.
Yep.
I'd be very interested to find out though.
I don't know the money, but it was supposed to be the biggest set piece ever, right? Like,
Right,
Hmm.
the biggest episode they've ever done.
right? I guess it's supposed to be big. The set piece was supposed to be like bigger than anything they've ever done before.
I believe it.
Yeah, that that I'm sure that mammoth cost him at least 10 million. You know,
$10 million mammoth, just like a real mammoth.
exactly. Might as well go back and clone him or something like John Hammond. Yeah, Jurassic Park. Yeah, this was a pretty solid battle though I thought. But yeah, there's quite a bit of buzz. The internet community is a lot more divisive than I expected. I don't know. Have you guys read anything on this one yet?
Everything I've been reading has been about Ollie. That's what everyone's all about. He's a little kid.
That poor potato farmer kid, man. Just never even had a chance.
Oh, he got his revenge.
I know he never had a chance. My point.
Oh, it's true. He is the Arya of the Wall.
Pretty much these days. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cast Beyond the Wall. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and I am joined, as always, by my brother-in-law co-host. Sir, introduce yourself.
Austin Lucari.
And my good friend, sir, can you introduce yourself?
Daniel Stoll.
And we are here to talk about what is supposed to be the biggest Game of Thrones episode ever. Like, as far as spectacle, this is an episode that the show's been built up to for 4 seasons. And we're going to tell you, we're going to break this down, and I feel like we're going to have some heated discussion on whether this actually lives up to the hype and the build-up. As always, I want to remind everyone that we're presented by our host at WeGotThisCovered.com. And, guys, this is actually a really big week for We Get This Covered. For those of you who play video games, there's a little event going on this week. It's called E3. You might have heard of it. It's kind of like taking the internet by storm. If you're gamers streaming through Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and all that jazz. So all sorts of fantastic stuff you can find out, and We Got This Covered. They are on the floor getting all the good news, and I'm sure they're getting some of the first breaks and some of the best hands-on demos. So go to check out We Got This Covered's homepage. Before we go ahead and get into this episode, though, we are joined by a very special guest this week. He is a good friend, former professor of mine. So he's, I'm kind of a little, Padawan here. He's raised me up to be apparently kind of analytical, I guess. Sir, could you introduce yourself?
Mark Pickens, glad to be here. Thanks, guys.
Those of you who might have tuned into our season last year, Mark joined us last year for the Bear and the Maiden Fair. But yeah, we're really happy to have you back. Love what you brought to the table, and always love chatting Game of Thrones with you.
Thanks. Yeah, glad to be here.
All right. Well, before we go ahead and get into the episode, I know last year we talked a little about your history of Game of Thrones, and remind me, you've watched it since the beginning, correct?
Yeah, heard the series was going to start. Read a few things about it beforehand. Didn't read any of the books, obviously, but watched some trailers and then was there when it premiered.
Fantastic. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. There's just not that. That's such a rare occurrence. I mean, that people watch that show since episode 1. I don't know. Just had to take some time to pick up some steam. But obviously, I don't know. Did you see if you saw this went from being that show that it was a very small audience to HBO's biggest show of all time this week, and it's actually neck and neck for the most popular show on cable with Walking Dead. So, kind of a fun fact there.
I didn't realize Walking Dead was as popular as it. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, massive, stupid popular. It's I don't want to I'll go on tangent too much. It's just one of those shows. I think it really tapped into a certain demographic that doesn't necessarily watch a ton of TV. I'm not going to stereotype or anything like that, but I'd say it's a certain demographic that probably doesn't watch as much TV. Really kind of taps into that survival instinct. So it's AMC by far. I mean, it doesn't have the critical acclaim as Breaking Bad or Mad Men, but it's definitely got more viewers by far than either of those. Even Breaking Bad's last season, which was huge, not as much as Walking Dead. Yeah. Mark, what is? I mean, and you can talk. I don't know. You can talk about it in the show or watching experience. What do you think is your favorite Game of Thrones moment?
Game of Thrones moment, probably. Well, I'm not good at favorites, but I'll give you one of many favorites. Early on season 3, there's a scene where Tywin's just taken over the small council and moved it near his chambers or whatever, and they come in for the first time, and he's sitting at the table, right, and they're all kind of playing like a musical chair to decide who's going to sit next to him. And Tyrion kind of ends the whole thing by dragging a chair and putting it at the other end, at the other head of the table. And just kind of the whole chess game and dynamics going on there. That's a favorite scene. I love all the Arya and Tyrion, all of the Arya and Tywin scenes, and some of Tyrion's monologues. But yeah, that scene stands out in recent memory as one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's just so great because it kind of captures the whole essence of like what all those characters are doing in the show, right? So Littlefinger's the opportunist, Cersei is the queen bee, so she just steps over everybody, and then Tyrion's just spiteful, So yeah.
Varys kind of watches, taking everything in, calculating, right? Yeah, no, it's good. All their characterization without much dialogue, right? It's all about space and positions. It's really well acted scene, well written scene. Yeah, definitely one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And always good for some laughs too. All right, guys. Well, to open up the show, we always talk about. We always want to ask a question, and I keep getting further and further away from Game of Thrones, intentionally or not, but Game of Thrones is still on the table, by the way, for this question. But this week's question I came up with is what to kind of tie us to the big epic battle at the Wall. I want to ask you guys, what is your favorite battle scene or battle sequence from a movie, a TV show, even a video game, or I guess a song if you know a song that's got an epic battle in it? So Austin, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with a very un-Game of Thrones-like battle in that the good people just stomp all the bad people. I'm going to go with the battle at Minas Tirith from The Return of the King. It's a really, really big battle scene with lots of really cool effects and like kind of fantastical monsters and things like that. It kind of resolves really corny. With the whole like undead army kind of just running in and just destroying everything, but I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. And it's probably one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, it's pretty much as far as Game of Thrones you can get, and it's actually I think what George R. R. Martin, when he set out to do Game of Thrones, is trying to subvert that type of battle sequence. Good guys just stomp all the bad guys because all the bad guys are like pure evil orcs and stuff like that. Yeah. Although I gotta give it to Peter Jackson especially. That it's pretty dang epic. I mean, I really don't think it's at least as far as size, it doesn't get any bigger or longer for that matter than the Battle of Minas Tirith. It's like an hour and a half long battle by the time Pelennor Fields ends up, and especially if you watch the extended cuts because God, you know how long those are. All right, Mr. Stoll, what is your favorite battle sequence?
Well, I was probably going to pick a Lord of the Rings thing, but now I have to think of something else. So yeah, Lord of the Rings is like one of my favorite like trilogies. So I don't know. I mean, I hate to just tag off that. Let me think for a second now because I got to change my something. I don't want to pick the same thing as him. So
all right, it's cool. Edit. All right, Mark, what is your favorite battle sequence, if like from a movie or a TV show?
I'm not one of those people that gets really swept up into action and big battle and effects and all that kind of thing. So the battle sequences to me still thrive on story and characterization and the narrative and interest like that. And so from that perspective, I really do think that Blackwater Bay is one of the best battle sequences. And everything that's happening with Tyrion there, and everything that's happening with even Joffrey. I mean, you just see those characters, Cersei. They all have such huge characterization moments, all set against the backdrop of an epic battle like that. To me, that's really masterful storytelling that manages to play on all those things about battle sequences that we like stereotypically, while at the same time using them for storytelling ends in a way that's really brilliant. And of course, if you are into all those kind of things, it had those too: the great effects, the great visuals, great action sequences, fight sequences, and so on.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw that episode, it was like, I mean, I was already, obviously, at the end of season 2, I was knee deep in already, but I was like, dear God, they just pulled off like an unrated, R-rated Lord of the Rings. I mean, because it was that, medieval battle and like dudes getting their heads just sliced straight off. But no, I think you're definitely onto something though, because I think what gives that episode the real meat and emotional investment is the fact that you're really are pulling for both sides of that, because you're rooting for Tyrion, obviously he's your hero, and you like Bronn and all those, but then you don't like Cersei. Well, generally people don't really like Cersei, and nobody likes Joffrey, and you're like, yeah, I hope those people get theirs, but at the same time, the flip side of the coin is you really like Davos, and you really you like that he's got this relationship with his son that they developed, and you like the pirate guy. You hate Stannis though. So, I mean, generalizations, obviously. Some people like Stannis. But, for the most part, I think, there's characters on both sides that you hate and you like, and you kind of want both of them to win and lose at the same time. And I also thought, I think something that gets a couple of scenes that get overlooked in that particular episode I think is great, you touched on, was the scenes between Sansa and Cersei. Kind of little breaks between the big movements. And you really, probably more so than almost... There's probably like 3 or 4 scenes in the whole series where I think you really get to see who Cersei is, and that's one of them for sure.
Yeah. Even some of the stuff with Sansa and the Hound, and there's just a lot. There's a lot you can go back to and pull up out of that episode that doesn't have to do with the great battle sequences, which were also awesome. So.
Right. No, I completely agree with you, but definitely had a lot more emotional weight, and honestly, I really do think that's the pinnacle of. I mean, obviously it's only an hour-long episode, but that's the same feeling I feel like every movie that has those types of battle sequences should have. Hold on, we got a final question. I don't normally do questions until we take question breaks. However, we do have a live viewer. Thank you so much. We probably should have opened to give you some credence here, sir. This does not have book spoilers. We will be reviewing everything all the way through the end of this episode. Mr. Stoll and I have read the books, but we will not spoil anything. So you can feel free knowing this is a spoiler-free zone. Great handy-dandy question app pops up on the side of our screen. All right, so now we have that question resolved. Daniel, what is your favorite battle sequence?
Okay, well, like I said, I was kind of leaning towards Lord of the Rings because those are sort of my favorite movies, but I'm going to go to a more modern battle and not do a fantastical battle, but a more war, like modern war. And I'm actually going to go to, I don't know why this popped in my head, but I just did, so I'm going to roll with it. I'm actually going to go to Saving Private Ryan. All the way back at the end, there's a lot of emotion there, and there's I don't know, I just feel like it's a battle.
And there he goes. Hey, Stoll. Hey,
yeah,
Stoll, we lost you. Okay.
I'll start over. Yeah, like I said, sort of wanted to go with Lord of the Rings or something like that, but I'm going to try to think outside the box a little bit here and go to a more of a modern type of battle or whatever. And actually, it just popped in my head as I was thinking. Go with Saving Private Ryan, actually, towards the end. That's a movie that I had to watch in high school, which I'm sure a lot of other people watched in high school or something along those lines. And I don't know, that movie just has always stuck with me, especially towards the end. There's a lot of emotion involved when that is going down, when you see all these men literally fighting for their lives at the end. And I don't know, that's just something that stuck out to me. So, and it was something outside the box, so I went with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the goriest battle sequences ever. I mean, when the opening with D-Day is just, it's intense and it's brutal. I mean, I don't know what D-Day looked like because I wasn't there, but they say it's pretty accurate. And that movie's, it's got some real shocked teeth to it, I think. Guys, I've been thinking about this all day. Which one am I going to go with? There's a lot of good stuff out there to choose with. And I hate to bring up Star Wars because we always bring up Star Wars on this podcast. But I was thinking Harry Potter's, the Battle of Hogwarts was good. I was thinking Lord of the Rings. I was even thinking Braveheart, The Patriot. What was the Kingdom of Heaven? Kingdom of Heaven was really close. I almost went with Kingdom of Heaven. But what I ended up going with, why did I go with Star Wars? I go with Return of the Jedi, the Battle at Endor, where we probably see the greatest dogfighting, and by dogfighting, that's the whole ships flying around like in space, I've ever seen. Even the new movies that had all the fancy CGI and the budgets and the effects and stuff like that didn't have quite the visual impact as I think the old school look did. And I think Mark's really onto something, because for me that it didn't have quite the complexity as Blackwater by any means, because it was pretty much, Darth Vader, Emperor, bad guys, Rebels, good guys. But it does kind of have that sense of Luke and Vader are on the Death Star while it's also getting attacked, which and it's kind of in the midst of Darth Vader's kind of redemptive arc, where he's kind of coming to terms with what he's going to do. So you're kind of like thinking, well, they're probably not going to blow it up, but exactly how is this all going to play out, and are they going to be able to get out in time? And is Lando going to make it out? And I don't know. Just a lot of visually stunning things in that sequence. And it's been three movies in the works where you see like just all your favorite characters in this big battle, and freaking Admiral Akbar going, "It's a trap." I mean, come on. It's just epic. So that Return of the Jedi, Battle at Endor, though, is probably up there for me. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get into our review of this week's episode, The Watchers on the Wall. Okay. Well, guys, before we get in, I seriously want to get some thoughts from all of you guys. Initial thoughts before we get it. We go scene by scene here. Austin, what did you think of this episode? What did you think of this episode?
I thought it was good from a set piece perspective. I don't know that it was my favorite. I think I do like Blackwater better. But it had some really, really cool moments. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking of the movie 300, because you got like 100 guys against 100,000 trying to keep them from going through a tiny little passage. So I couldn't help but think of those parallels the whole time, and Jon Snow can be Leonidas in this scenario, I guess. But it was a good episode.
Should just take Jano's stunt off the wall and
yeah.
The Sparta kick. Yeah. Okay, well, Mark, what did you think of the episode?
So maybe this is a kind of a complicated answer, but as far as television goes, it's great. It always is with Game of Thrones, and this was no exception from that perspective. As it relates to other Game of Thrones episodes, I feel like it's kind of like B+ quality, to be honest, and particularly as it relates to other 10th or 9th episodes or whatever of seasons, it's almost like C quality, because when you stack it up against those, I was thinking about this earlier today. You've got Ned's beheading in season 1. You got Blackwater Bay in season 2. You got the Red Wedding in season 3. I think I'm getting those right. And then you got this battle, and to me, it's easily the 4th place of those.
Yeah.
So as it relates to kind of climactic penultimate episodes for Game of Thrones, it's like C quality, and I hate to say that because it's still really good, but that's kind of how I feel.
No, fair point. Well, hold on 1 second. Mr. Stoll, what did you think of the episode?
Yeah, I sort of am along the same lines as that. I did not think this lived up to the hype that it was given. And maybe I judged it, or maybe I came into it with a certain expectation because of the hype, and then was let down because it didn't reach that. But I agree, it was a good episode, and there's a lot of great moments in this episode, especially some of the camera work I actually thought was fantastic. There's one scene, I'm sure you guys will remember what I'm talking about.
And he's gone. 3, 2. Oh. All right, we got you back.
Okay. What was the last thing I said?
You're talking about the camera shot.
Okay. Yeah, there's just one camera shot that really stood out to me. It's the one thing that stands out to me from this entire episode, where they do an entire circle sweep of the entire castle, of Castle Black, and you see all the chaos that's going around. I thought that was a really fantastic shot. So there's a lot of great moments like that, but I do agree that it doesn't live up to the other episode 9s and even some other episodes. So yeah, I thought it didn't live up to it was a good episode, but it did not live up to the hype that it was given in other episodes of Game of Thrones. So
the one thing I will say about it is that, one, this has been a really good season. I'm not sure the whole episode 9 climax thing really worked for this season, because we had so many moments that were really, it just kind of were bigger than this throughout this season, I think, ultimately. Yeah. But given what happened last episode, it was nice to have the good guys win a little bit this time. I was so depressed after last episode that this was kind of exciting and fun.
Well, Austin, I think you're definitely onto something, and that was kind of what I was coming at, because I actually I'm right on par with Mark, actually. I think this is very much I don't think there's any question. This is, if I was going to rank this against other episode 9s, which is the traditional Game of Thrones format, is episode 9 the climax. This is definitely the bottom. However, I also think part of the reason I think part of the reason I feel that way is because this season doesn't follow that format, so it's actually set the bar much, much higher. Now, that said, and I think we've been, especially with the end of episode 8, which was so emotionally, I mean, honestly, that was really if we were going to have an episode 9 moment, that probably would have been it, just because of the what was at stake and the emotional investment we had in the character and how the show is traditionally building up to that big moment. I think episode 8 was it. I still think overall, though, even in comparison to those other episodes, episode 9, the big episodes, this was the weakest. This definitely wasn't as powerful, as shocking as the Red Wedding. Blackwater, I think, was a much better battle and was probably the pinnacle of, like I said earlier, probably the pinnacle of what a battle sequence or an action-heavy episode should look like. And then Ned's death is just classic, and I don't think it meets any of those. As far as impact, although that said, I still think there's a lot of great things that happened in the episode. I think it was really great, but I just don't think. I guess when the credits were starting to roll, I really sat there and I was like, that was it? I don't know, I don't know if I'd hyped it up so much because of how great the season's been, or if it was because the series has been built up to this for 4 seasons. I just felt like there should have been more.
Well, Daniel talked about some of the great technical shots. I do want to go ahead and give extra credit for just some really great little sequence moments. I mean, I mentioned before, I'm not typically the action battle special effect. I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't really get me revved up. But I will say that the giant shooting the arrow was amazing.
Oh yeah.
There are moments like that were as good or better than anything I've seen in the series, as far as just really creative and technical work, and in that way, I think the series kind of maintains the position it has as being, especially as far as television goes, but even in relative to a lot of the major films that might compare with much larger budgets. It really just showed the skill of our directors and showrunners.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think from a technical perspective, and I know we'll hit on them as with the episode. The giant being my favorite moment, and we actually have one of our Auxiliaris Gaming over here. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I actually went ahead and submitted that to the arrow with the giant was director Neil Marshall's idea. Now, I should probably go ahead and preface this before we hop in and break this down scene by scene. Neil Marshall is a film. He's done a couple films. I believe he did The Descent. He's done a handful of movies, but he also directed Blackwater. And they brought him back on. They wanted to recreate another single event episode where they stay in one location and you just cover this one epic battle. And he's a director who's been known for being pretty on the creative end and being able to kind of capture that epic feel. So he looks like our listener is also saying that we're going to get an extra long season finale. So I guess we'll talk about that more towards the end of the episode, though, the discussion, though. But yeah, Neil Marshall, and I have to hand it to him. I mean, visually, technical level, this was as good as it's ever going to get on TV. I mean, anybody who didn't know what they were watching, if they just sat down and watched, would have no clue this was a TV. I mean, this was a TV show. I mean, it's just it's better than a lot of movies, really, in a lot of ways. So, and I think some of the technical stuff we're going to hit on, I think especially is just top notch. It's experimental, it's creative, it's some of the best we're going to see. Period. All right, are you guys ready to dive into this thing?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so we kind of start with more of a we kind of start with Sam this week, Austin's favorite character in the whole series. He was saying he was confessing to Jon that he kind of he was wrestling with Jon whether or not he loved Gilly, and he was trying to justify his love for her. He's like, well, it doesn't say we can't be with women, it just says we can't marry them or have children. And and they start talking, and there's just really interesting discussion. I thought it was kind of funny though. Jon's trying to describe it, and he's like, it's like I don't know, it's a I don't know. I'm not a bleeding poet, with this Jon Snow voice or whatever, which I thought was pretty cool. I guess if I ask you guys one question, and I mean we can tie this into the stuff he had with Aemon too. Do you think Sam comes into his own a little bit this episode?
No, I don't. He's still the same annoying Sam. I think he's always been. He has a moment which I think is completely ridiculous moment.
It's a couple moments, Austin. I think you're not giving him credit, Austin. I think he's got several actually.
He has a speech which is good. He talks about. I mean, we'll get to these scenes, but he has one scene which I think is good, and another scene which is just completely ridiculous and unbelievable. But I think he's still the same Sam. I don't know that much has changed since before.
All right, so no extra backbone, nothing, Austin. He isn't.
No, I give him nothing. I give him nothing.
Man.
All right.
I am not nearly the Sam hater that Austin is. I do find him annoying at some points, but I don't hate him. I don't know. I thought some of the moments were kind of cool to see, from him this episode. And like, if we really want to get into it, like he gave I can't even remember his name, the potato farmer's boy. He gave him a little speech, and he's the reason that he gave him the courage to shoot an arrow later, or crossbow or whatever later in the episode. So I thought he tried, he gave it his best, and he does put Gilly in a safe position this time.
He doesn't leave her in a brothel when right where the wildlings are in their path. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that Sam does have those moments, and sort of his little monologue speech thing at the top was sort of lightning. He does feel like he's actually important now, and I think for him that's a big deal because he's always kind of seen himself as worthless, and he's kind of seen himself as not being being able to give to the wall, but now he sees himself as something that is useful, something that can maybe actually do some good, and I think that's important for him as a character. It's not a lot, but it's something small, and it was kind of cool to see for me.
Yeah, it gets a little bit of confidence. Mark, you have anything to say on the matter?
I don't have strong positive or negative feelings towards him. I mean, I have sympathy for him, if that's positive, I guess. As far as him being kind of like an oath, him negotiating how he feels about his oath and his feelings for Gilly and all that, I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting kind of thematic territory that the show takes on quite well. And you see Sam, he's sort of rationalizing a way around having to break his oath, kind of, through technicality, so to speak, and interpretation, which is the kind of thing that sets him off against someone like the Starks, like Ned or Robb, or even Jon in some ways, I think, in interesting ways, where as they're people who live loyalty to oath to the letter and kind of are willing to die bravely, but they always die, right? I mean, the same thing that makes Ned honorable dooms him in George Martin's world. And Sam, though I think we have to give him credit, even if it's a really strange way, he always does sort of manage to rise to the occasion. I mean, he kills the White Walker. He manages to essentially save Gilly. He manages to survive this battle so far and to accomplish some pretty important, at least in terms of implications for others and things. But he does it in a kind of unconventionally non-heroic way. And he gives the speech about becoming nothing at all. That's how he does it often. And that's so opposite of the kind of Ned Stark model. He's like the prototype of the guy who does the brave, loyal, courageous duty, takes on the violent kind of. And I think, if anything, what I got out of Sam's little moments in this episode was that I think Martin is more sympathetic almost to the Sams than to the Ned Starks in a way, or at least Martin has created a world which is much more hospitable for people like Sam even than people like Ned Stark. And so in that way, I think the show is able to kind of provoke cliched ways of thinking about heroism in the way that it sets Sam off as the survivor in a way, and guy who is able to accomplish these kind of crazy things that against all odds that he shouldn't be able to accomplish. And so he's a very unconventional version of heroism in the show, but a kind that adapts well, at least. Maybe it's just luck. Maybe I'm making too much of it. But seems to be better suited to those circumstances than a lot of your traditional heroes.
Right.
I have to credit a lot of it to luck, because I can't imagine that if any other character was in these situations, they'd have been dead. And that for some reason George R. R. Martin is out to get me and is working against me to keep this man alive. But yeah, I mean, I think there has been people in less dangerous situations and they die. More skilled, arguably more intelligent people.
But the key is, I think, is are they able to navigate the dangers of the situation, right? I mean, because Sam, despite being incompetent at times, also I mean I thought especially this episode, kind of really
He had good moments in this episode.
he was a
one
lot
moment in
more
particular I
more
found
practical.
unrealistic is when he should have died and didn't. But that's fine. The rest were really good. He had a lot of good moments in this episode, and to Mark's point, the speech about him being nothing is probably my very, very favorite moment of him from the entire series.
Yeah, fair point. I thought it was a good speech, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just some interesting developments, kind of showcasing that this character is coming on. I think Mark's onto something. Like, he is at least aware of how the world works a little bit more. I think he's not as idealistic. I really think that he's starting to show that he's more practical. I mean, yeah, he's also he can be kind of cowardice or kind of incompetent, but he's also kind of aware of those things, which makes him more well equipped to not die, I guess, in a way. I did like how the show set it up. Like, he told Gilly, he's like, "I'll be back," which in typical Game of Thrones territory means, "Oh, you're totally dead." But no,
we heard that last week, didn't we? Don't leave me alone in this world. Never.
Well, I will say, Sam gets a pretty sharp rebuke at the end, right? When he's telling John, "Don't go," and John says, something to the effect of, "Yeah, you're right. It's a bad plan. What's your plan?" And then walks off, right? So I mean, I don't mean to suggest that Sam's got it figured out and Sam is the hero, but I do mean to say that something about Sam's ability to survive by luck, by unconventional heroism at weird moments, whatever you want to call it, is definitely. I think Martin is making a point that people like Sam sometimes manage to stick around, and people like Ned Stark don't last a season in a place like Westeros, where good and evil are not so straightforwardly Tolkien-like.
Right.
Yeah.
Not all orcs and humans, right?
Or giants.
Giants. Yeah, so we'll hop on. Also, at the beginning of the episode, we kind of got a little quick scene with the wildlings. So we got Ygritte, we got Tormund, the man, red-bearded Santa Claus over there, and then Stur, he's the thin leader. As they're kind of camping out, I thought they had some interesting interaction to show. I mean, I think they haven't been able to do a lot with the wildlings, but we did get to see how the different tribes don't necessarily mesh very well. I mean, they're united behind a common cause, but even their cultural their culture, their customs are not the same. The way they talk about it, it's the same, and there's a lot of I thought a lot of tension between them right before they march into battle. I don't know. What did you guys think of it? Anything about the scene with the wildlings before battle goes off?
I think you're exactly right. I think it highlighted that they're not a unified group, and later on, Jon Snow kind of hints, or basically just comes out and says, like, if without the leader that they currently have, they would probably just kind of dissolve. And this scene definitely highlights that they're not really getting along, that they're there because they have one common purpose right now, and that they may not last through adversity.
Right. I mean, if Mance Raynor's gone, they're out?
Maybe. I don't know yet, but I mean I think that's the implication.
Well, I guess
we're talking about scenes that kind of annoyed him. That scene annoyed me in one particular respect. I felt like Ygritte's whole kind of bombastic, tough guy, posturing. I mean, obviously, I think they're trying to show to a certain extent how we're supposed to see through that and see that some of that is sham, right? Because she's riddled with all these mixed emotions about Jon and everything. But it just felt annoying to me. She was very annoying in that scene. I felt like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not particularly fond of her, so that I may be projecting kind of like Austin says he's got these hang-ups with Sam. Maybe I have some of those with her. But that scene was rough for me.
Right.
Yeah, I think to some respect she's communicating in the only way that the people she's communicating with understand. That's all they know is violence and kind of bravado.
Well, I think part of that too is that she's trying to convince herself a little bit too that she really does want to, kill all of them and kill Jon Snow and all this stuff because, like Pickens, Mark referred, sorry, what Mark was saying was, she even has these mixed emotions. I think she's trying to convince herself that this is what she needs to. She's trying to convince herself as much as them. I think in that scene too. So.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true because like you said, mixed emotions with Jon. I think it's typical lover scorn, right? She really wants to kill him, but she still loves him, type of thing. I guess.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's purposefully ambiguous, and I think the Maester has that line when he's talking to Sam earlier, where he says, "Love is the death of duty," or whatever, right? When they're talking about Sam and Gilly, but I think you can apply it. It's meant to be kind of metaphorized into thinking about Jon and Ygritte and others in the series as well, and then we're probably going to get there. Maybe I'm jumping the gun talking about it, but I also thought that Jon said he's not a bleeding poet.
Right.
Thinking bad poetry, like when she gets shot through the heart.
Yeah.
With the arrow, like Cupid's arrow is what kills her, kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, that was one of the things where I was like, oh, come on, Game of Thrones, you're better than that.
Right.
It struck me as cliche, but maybe it's my sort of irritations with that character that are coloring my judgment of that. But.
Well,
Ollie could be a cherub. He's got the look.
just give him some wings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, apparently potato farmers are known to bring about good luck and love. So, no. I think honestly, and I think Mark raises a really good point though. Jon follows probably the most, at least up to this point, has followed by far the most traditional arc of any of the characters. He's he's probably the most traditional hero on the show, and in that sense, I feel like he is probably the true successor to Ned Stark that we thought Robb was, but he wasn't. Robb was pretty traditional too, but I think Jon, like even the love, he falls in love, he wrestles with his vows, but it's all for the greater good, and he comes back and he helps them unite his men together. He's a badass fighter. All those things. Like he's probably the most typical character, and his arc is that way too. And I think that the death of Ygritte, which I guess we can hop around a little bit, plays directly into that. It was someone told me yesterday it felt too Romeo and Juliet, and I was like, well, I hadn't thought about it because I feel like that the show does need a hint of it's. I think it does need a very traditional hero to actually evolve in this world. And Ned Stark wasn't that character. Robb Stark wasn't the character. So it looks like Jon's that character if he sticks around.
It'll be interesting to see if they end up making him a bit more dynamic and kind of corrupt him just a bit, so he's not the whole squeaky clean classical hero. I hope that's the direction they go with it.
Yeah. But do you guys agree with Mark though? Do you think this kind of the death of Ygritte was kind of played into that a little too much?
I do agree. I think it was something that we probably saw coming. Something I think we knew was going to happen in that scenario. She already tried to kill him, but didn't actually really kind of chose not to kill him. And frankly, her remaining was really kind of dragging the story down, I think. So I
felt like her death was impending and necessary for all the same reasons. My particular issue, though, was more with the way they did it. It was me. It seemed like they were reaching pretty hard for a kind of poetic death for her that seemed kind of cliched.
Right.
The whole through the heart thing.
We should have stayed in that cave.
Right.
The romantic one-liner, and then and like you said, shot to the heart.
Well, and it felt like a moment where my thought was, wow, I should care more about this than I do. Like this should be a big moment.
Right.
And the way that it played out, I just wasn't all that grief-struck or, when, even though I didn't like Robb Stark much as a character either, when he dies, it's like a heavy thing.
Right.
And so, I don't know, this moment just felt like I was supposed to care about it more than I cared about it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so a question I have for you, for everybody really, but do you think if this death had happened earlier in the season, do you think it would have been more impactful? And the reason I ask is because I felt like part of the reason the impact was lost, because I felt like it was lost too, actually, was because we hadn't really seen her. We've seen her like twice this season, and like I felt like we were so far removed from her, like their love relationship, that it was like, okay, I mean, and it also kind of hinted that she was probably gonna die. It was like, because we hadn't seen her often enough. I don't know. It just felt like there was like the momentum they had coming off last season, where at the very least, even if she died the same way, it's just cliche. The like emotional investment for a lot of viewers would have been there.
I think she should have died. I think you're right. I think she should have died sooner, back when I cared about her more. But I think they purposely pushed it off so that they could have the big giant set piece in episode 9 like they wanted, and like they've done in the past, which I ultimately think was a poor decision and wasn't as impactful as it could have been.
Well, I think Caleb, you're onto something too with it. It's the fact that we haven't seen John and her together in a romantic way since last season,
right,
which in real chronological time for us is over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so any kind of like warmth that we might have had on that romance is probably, some of it's cool just from time and not have, you know what I mean? It seemed like part of it was timing, in other words, quite literally, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we didn't have it. I mean, even if they had, I don't know how they would have done it, but even if they had one scene this season where they connected, 2 minute, even a 2 or 3 minute scene. I mean, just something to remind you, oh, this is why we loved that they were together in the first place.
Right.
Because honestly, I and you can again disagree with me. I actually loved the relationship, not necessarily because of the way it was executed, because I felt like more so than most characters in the show, other than maybe Tyrion and Shay, it was the most purely love-driven relationship we've. I mean, because those two, they just loved each other because they needed each other and they liked each other, as opposed to all these political backdealings and these marriages, and even some of the truer loves like Rob and his wife. It felt politically motivated to some extent, or either politically motivated or out of grief.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I think that I agree with you guys. If it had happened sooner, we would have had more of that emotional connection, at least a little bit. And so I do agree that that was lost a little bit throughout the season.
No, it's just frustrating because I mean, again, I definitely think I agree with Mark to some extent that, I mean, they haven't necessarily executed it in the most convincing way, but I don't know, just the idea of it was really appealing to me. I really believed in that season 3. I was like, yeah, that's something you can get behind. But
well, I think they did execute it well in the beginning. I think it came to an end that was meant to feel more climactic, that felt kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah,
and that was my biggest gripe. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was all right. I don't know. Her death is. I mean, I'm sad. I was a little sad, but I wasn't. Like you said, I wasn't as sad as I felt like I should have been. I mean, it just was like, well, darn, we kind of saw that kind of coming.
I mean, unfortunately, I got spoiled for this event, but it didn't surprise me, and I was watching with my wife, who also was like not shocked at all. It just didn't. I don't know. I don't think it was impactful, like you said, as it was supposed to be.
Which is sad because that was really supposed to be the emotional punch at the end. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, he had all the big epic battle, and that was supposed to be like the this is what we lose.
I cared so much more about the guys in the tunnel than I did about her.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of sad.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Actually, let's go ahead and circle back to the battle now, Austin. Now you bring up the Night's Watchman in the tunnel. We'll get to that scene specifically because I did like that scene a lot. But before we begin, kind of go through scene by scene here, or get an overview. So something I want to highlight, guys. Oh, actually, sorry. So what did you guys think?
Mance is a man of his word.
Was Mance a man of his word? Was this the biggest fire the North has ever seen? I mean, I know we only said it once, but I feel like we've been hyping this thing forever.
Well, I thought it was funny. You could tell that they were about to reveal it, but then they even hide it for like an extra 10 seconds from you. Like, okay, we all. I thought that was funny how they kind of made you wait an extra couple seconds.
Yeah.
You
could just see the wildlings take off, and you're like, oh, that's the fire I keep hearing about.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty dang big fire.
Yeah, it was.
The question we have to ask ourselves, though, was it bigger than Blackwater? Because remember, we had this discrepancy a couple episodes ago where we're like, well, he only said in the North. Might not be the biggest in Westeros, just the biggest the North's ever seen.
It was a bigger fire, yeah. Okay. It wasn't green, but it was bigger.
The green is... yeah, there's the green. So, something I kind of want to hit on, again, we did get... we did get some good character moments. The problem is I don't think the characters we were getting moments with we hadn't spent as much time with them, and they aren't nearly as complex. But one of those characters being, and I really liked what we got, was was Alistair Thorne, the guy who has been hating on Jon Snow since the beginning. Who we all kind of, I mean, I kind of hate to some degree just because he's just that. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy is just totally out for Jon, right? But he had that really awesome speech, and I don't know if it was supposed to be motivational or demotivational, but he was basically just talking about what it means to be a leader. He's like, you know what? He's like, go ahead, just tell me I was wrong. Tell me, and Jon plays off all nice guys. Yeah, it was a tough call, and he's like, you know what? Punks like you know what? You can question me all day long, but the second I start questioning myself is the day our entire army loses. And I think it was meant to be. I think he kind of realizes Jon's that leader type, and he's going to take over. I really do feel like he knows it's going that way. So he's trying to give him some advice in a weird sort of way, because then he follows it by immediately saying, "Then we can get as soon as this battle's over, we can go back to how it's always been. I hate you, you hate me, and we just keep fighting." But I thought it was a nice scene. I liked it.
Yeah, this is the first moment where I kind of liked him, and he had a great episode, honestly. And it was this little speech where you're like, okay, he can be a sympathetic character. He can be someone that I can buy into. And I think more than there was an aspect of trying to teach Jon Snow a little bit about leadership and kind of the decisions you have to make. And it was also to try to convince Jon Snow, like, look, I screwed up, but this is the situation we're in now, and I need you to buy into what I'm trying to do here, or we're not going to make it. But overall, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, did you guys, Daniel or Mark, did you guys have any? Did you guys warm up to Alistair there a little bit there at the end?
Yeah, I like that moment. I think it was sort of it shows a little bit why he's been kind of acting the way he is, why it may be extreme or over the top. He's been sort of, like he said, he's got to make these tough decisions, and you just got to make it and stick with it. And it sort of shows you his kind of philosophy, I guess, on the way that he leads. And you kind of get a peek at that. And you're like, okay, I can see where he's coming from a little bit. I don't like the way, obviously, he may be over the top or extreme and treating this character that we love poorly, but you sort of get like, okay, he's trying to be this tough, stern leader who people can turn to in these kind of times, and they do. They actually, they listen to him when he goes down and gives the speech or whatever, and they sort of, they fight for him and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know, it was a nice little moment.
Yeah, certainly better when compared to Janos Slynt.
Oh gosh,
yes, very much so.
Oh yeah. Well, Janos Slynt had some great character moments this episode too. I mean, by great, I mean we got to see who he was. Coward hiding. He takes command and he's in shock, and then he's like, "Those are freaking giants on mammoths down there," and he's like,
"Those are myths. That's a myth."
Yeah, those giants. Yeah.
I think it does highlight. I mean, and he's been saying it the whole time. Just kind of highlights that the denial, and I think it ties to the South, the mentality of the South, that no matter how much evidence is presented, these people are just totally living in their own world of backstabbing and politics and such.
They don't fully realize the threat that's up here.
No.
Did
Janos Slynt? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. He got sent up here after Blackwater?
Yeah, no, before. So if you let's do a quick flashback here for those of you listening. We've seen Janos Slynt several times throughout the season. We're gonna flash all the way back to season 1, and let's think back to Littlefinger. Ned Stark goes to Littlefinger to hire the Gold Cloaks to help him take the throne from Joffrey, and then Littlefinger backs him up, but not really. But the people he is paying are the city guard, led by Janos Slynt. Janos Slynt then proceeds to backstab Ned Stark, and he gets the reputation. I mean, everybody knows he backstabbed Ned Stark. In comes Tyrion in season 2, and they're having a little conversation, and Tyrion is trying to pull out all the weeds, and one of them is Janos Slynt, and he doesn't trust him at all because he got bought off. So what does he do? Chips him off through the wall, and so he left at the beginning of season 2, so before Blackwater, and then he arrived at some point while Jon was away with the wildlings at the wall. And I guess because he was captain of the City Watch, they just gave him an automatic role as an officer, which I guess which is stupid. But given the lack of good leaders and stuff at the wall, I guess it fits, right? But yeah, I know. So Janos Slint also got some cool moments down on the ground too. But I thought there was on a technical note here. I thought the shot, the bird's eye view shot, where they pan up and you see the wildlings from the outside start to swarm, and it just pans up and you just it scrolls over
from
the
both
wall.
sides, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you see both sides. It goes from one side and all the way to the other side. Really impressive. Just kind of captures the scope and how big the wall is, how many wildlings there are. Just really impressive stuff. And then we see the mammoths, because that's just freaking awesome. Giant mammoths. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Just pure spectacle, because why not?
The Oliphants.
Oliphants, yes, they're from the. I guess you could see that as a kind of a takeaway from Lord of the Rings, I guess. But see now, if you move down to the ground level though, because Thorin goes down there, he gives this really epic speech about how he's like, we're not gonna let the Ithans boil us alive and yada yada. They're gonna be eating your flesh. All that great. Gives his own little motivational speech down there, which I really like. And then you just see the wildlings. They break down the wall. They're taking them out. Sam's up on the little wall, picking guys off with what's his name? Pip. Him and Pip are like archering up on the wall and stuff like that. And I actually thought Pip's the one that bites the bullet. He's goes to like shoot a wildling, and Ygritte gives him right in the throat. And did you guys? I mean, you guys probably recognize that character from before. Did you know his name though?
I knew his name, but I'm a book reader, so I knew a little bit. Maybe that's an advantage I have. I don't know, but.
I certainly knew who he was. I also knew who the guy who leads the tunnel, holding the tunnel against the giant. Knew both the characters, but probably couldn't have told you their names.
Okay.
I know them now, but I sort of made sure that I knew them because we were going to be talking about it tonight.
Right.
Yeah, the only kind of group of those like 5 guys that hung out with Jon Snow and kind of supported him that I knew the name of was Ed.
Okay.
The rest, well, they've been there since training. Since Jon Snow first arrived, but didn't know their names.
Right, and I guess that brings up the point too when we talk about the emotional impact, and it was all on Ygritte. But I think I'm starting to. I feel like the reason this episode probably didn't have quite the impact is we just don't know these characters as well, and it's just they're just not as interesting. Because those are all great. Those are all characters I liked. I mean, we've had great moments with all of them, like you said, since the beginning. But I don't know. If none of them had the. I mean, you didn't feel really that bad when you. I mean, you were sad, but you weren't like.
You were just sort of like, oh, that stinks. Like, that's about it. Like,
they couldn't spend much time with them at the wall, right? Because there wasn't much going on up there.
Yeah,
if we'd spent more episode time there throughout the past couple seasons, it'd been kind of boring. And I think that's what they were trying to do with the whole excursion beyond the wall to go get the Night's Watchman that had taken over Craster's Keep and stuff. Yeah. Trying to characterize people a little better, get you to care about what was to come. It wasn't quite enough, I don't think. I think it was overshadowed by the Locke storyline and things like that. So, no, I didn't know them, but I did care about them quite a bit, actually. And Pip I didn't recognize, but the guy with the beard who dies in the tunnel, I recognized him. Yeah. He had a lot of lines throughout the series so far, and it was kind of sad to see him go.
Let's go ahead and why not? Let's go ahead and hop on over there to that scene in the tunnel, because I thought probably the most emotionally impactful thing is his name was Grin, and Jon tells him to hold the gate, and they go down there, and then the freaking giant gets in there, and they just start chanting the Night's Watch, oath or whatever, and I mean, I don't even believe in the Night's Watch, and I was like, man, I just got chills because it was something they believed in so strong, and that was how he was motivating them to take down the giant, because he knew that normally they wouldn't be able to do it. He just said, stand the line and be brave, basically, and here's why we're doing this, and here's what it's about. Really, really emotional scene. I was so sad when they died. I mean, I figured they probably did as soon as you see the giant bust through the gate, but I was like, man, it's a tough one.
It was interesting because I didn't know. One, I can't believe they actually did it. Two, you didn't know if they did or not because they didn't show it for quite a while, but I guess you kind of assumed it because no giant came flying through murdering everybody. So it was pretty good. What were you going to say, Daniel?
I was just going to say, I think, and like we pointed out, these have been guys who have been with Jon since the beginning, but these are guys who are willing to just follow Jon, and I think that's important because they've been sort of building him up to this like sort of leader type role, and I don't know how long it's going to take him to get to full leader bone. But these guys have been like the guy when he was up in the wall, he says hold the wall. He's like, okay, I'm holding the wall. He just immediately follows him. He has so much respect for him, and they are friends, but he also has respect for him as a leader as well, and he's just willing to give his life for for Jon and for the wall and for all that they're fighting for. And so I thought that was like maybe an element. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I thought that was a little bit of that as well.
One thing I'll say about the vow scene, or they're repeating the oath. I thought it was a nice juxtaposition from early on. The episode sort of opens with that scene with, it's maybe not the hard opening, but close to the beginning of the episode. We have Jon and Sam talking about, kind of interpreting, dissecting those same vows, right? And so and they're kind of, in a way, it's like they're having this kind of abstract conversation about them as this kind of intellectualized thing, right? Well, then all of a sudden, down there in that tunnel, it gets really concrete. And so you hear them repeating them, and all of a sudden they take on a different kind of meaning and a kind of immediacy. And I don't know, it felt to me like those two different scenes, both about the oath that those guys swear and what it means to be on the Night's Watch, right? It's kind of like, okay, there's this abstract thing that affects, that you can sort of intellectualize and philosophize about, right? And Sam particularly is inclined to those kind of things. And then there are these guys that really end up sacrificing their life, and it becomes kind of very real and tangible. And I don't know, I thought there was something poignant about that, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like their vows actually mean something. There's a little depth because, again, like you're saying, it's kind of like just this idea that you're following, as opposed to actually seeing the practicality and the cost and the actual cost of it, what it really means. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because we've seen a lot with the Night's Watch, but I don't think, like you were saying, there wasn't that kind of the kind of thematic connection there usually. Because it's like they said the oath in an episode, and then you see them fight for a while, and it's kind of lost. I guess you kind of forget what it's all about in the first place.
Well, didn't we learn a long time ago that that Jon's not the first guy to break the oath regarding women, right?
Yeah, right.
In fact, there's a whole brothel that exists to service the Night's Watch.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of idea that the vows are important, but like how important are they? And then some people seem to really live by them, whereas others seem to have a kind of looser relationship with them or whatever. But then, like when the rubber really meets the road, so to speak, it can be a matter of life or death. And we saw that kind of real and actualized in that scene and in the battle more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, I mean, honestly, that probably was at least for me, the most emotionally charged scene, just because I honestly didn't know if they were going to stop him or not. Because I mean, I knew the outcome of the battle, but I didn't know maybe the giant gets in and they stop. I don't know. I just didn't know if they were going to be able to hold the wall. And then just the way they chanted, like you said, they really believed in those words in that moment. It brought credibility and I think some extra emotional depth there too. Well, we did get to see a little. There's a lot of little, sparring matches we saw throughout the mix. Personal favorite is Alistair Thorne and Tormund, because that was pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
It was really
great. Jon and the Finn was really good too.
Yeah, Jon and the Finn was fantastic. I mean, especially when Jon gets his head beaten against that anvil, I was like, dear God, how's he coming back from that?
Yeah.
And of course, hammer to the head. That was brutal. Very brutal. So you mentioned earlier, we talked about some of these big sweeping, some of these technical shots there, and you mentioned the 360 shot. That was a really, really great scene. It was kind of you swoop in there, and you got. I mean, I thought it captured the epic feel, probably more so than almost other than the bird's eye view shot at the beginning, and then that shot were two that really captured the insanity and the epicness, epic scope and everything. And
it shows you how chaotic something like that really is. Like, you really
Right.
need to see something, like, there's all these different things going on all at one point, and you get to see, like, some people don't even know what's going on, like, a couple feet away from them because they have to fight for their lives. I just thought it was kind of really cool how they showed all that.
Well, then we got another cool direwolf perspective shot, right?
Yeah.
First-person direwolf.
Yeah.
That also, I think, like when you combine the kind of sprawling, big, wide-angle landscape, sweeping 360 views with then something as tight as that, first-person shot from the direwolf. There's something about like the feeling of being in the battle and the feeling of seeing the battle on its grand scale and everything.
Right.
And technically, that's why I said like A+ for this episode, even though
yeah.
we all agreed it's not necessarily the best of maybe the worst of the season. I mean, of the 9th episodes of any season. there's still, especially technically, some things about this episode that rival anything I've ever seen. And not just technical in the sense of technical accomplishments in and of themselves, but the way that technical accomplishments turn into something that's really got a great aesthetic and contributes to the whole thematic thing going on in the series too.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And I think, like I said, it's doing stuff that's setting such a high bar. Because I don't feel like this is just good for TV. This is just good, fantastic, and it's really setting a high bar for what TV shows can become. And we don't have to go on the whole tangent about TV shows right now, but I'm just very excited that we are in an era where this can happen on TV, and we're breaking down the barriers of this is good TV. This is good for TV. It used to be the same way with movies. Oh, it's good for movies. Now you're starting to see kind of all these techniques come in, and it's kind of evolving. Game of Thrones, I think, is really pushing the boundaries for television and art form, both technically and from a story perspective.
Well, then again, sometimes you just see so much of amazing technical stuff, but it's sort of technical stuff for its own sake.
Right.
Especially all the 3D stuff that's happening in film right now. Much of the time, I don't think it serves story well.
Right.
All of these were amazing technical feats that were accomplished in this episode, and they also were seamlessly artful in the way they told the story and didn't draw attention to themselves as, hey, wait for a minute while we show you this cool, digital effect that we can accomplish.
Well, it was like looking at the story and saying, all right, what's the best way to tell the story? Oh, and it's like, okay, what do we want to capture this? It's the difference between Michael Bay, Transformers, and I don't know, something like Star Wars or even Lord of the Rings. I mean, Lord of the Rings is a little borderline sometimes. I think they get a little out there just for the sake of it. But it's using the technical, pushing the technical limits to tell the story. Which is something I think James Cameron tried to do with Avatar. I guess it's up for debate, but well, Austin. So Sam, like I was going to point out earlier, for those of you who listened last week, Austin put out a hashtag called hashtag Eat Sam because he really wanted Sam to die. And
this was ridiculous.
You know what? Okay, I want to preface this by saying, when the Finn runs in there and he gets in that, when Sam's loading his bow, I dead serious thought that Sam shot the steer, the leader of the Finns. So I lost it because I thought it was the same guy, and then I found out when John fought him, I was like, it's not the same guy. But I was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't that just be priceless to see? I want to see.
It's ridiculous. How many people has that Finn killed? And he dies to Sam Tarly. He should feel ashamed of himself. I thought Sam was going to end up shooting himself in the face with that crossbow.
Here's my theory.
Never shot one.
I think he saw Sam and he got really hungry and just kind of lost all control, right? I mean, if you're a cannibal, Sam is a fine meal.
I'll blame it on that. His hunger overtook him and he just lost his mind.
I mean, how else could a Finn be taken down by Samuel Tarly other than to fulfill his hunger?
I don't know what to do with Sam. I feel like when a character in this show, by the rules of this show, and they change the rules on you all the time, makes the number of mistakes that he has made, they're usually punished for it, and he hasn't been. He's just bumbling through this show like nothing has ever happened. He kills a White Walker, drops the knife. All these just dumb things that would have killed any other character. Somehow he makes it through it, and good on him, I guess.
And I've hinted at this before. I think Mark hit on this earlier. What if Martin is writing him in to kind of subvert your expectations for the bubbling idiot's not going to make it? Because there are people in the real world who somehow just make it.
Yeah, and that's. There's been a couple other scenes this season where he tries to, I think, or the creators try to show the importance of the little people, and how kind of the entire world is built on the backs of just the normal little people like Sam. So trying to empower him and give him the opportunities to do big things is probably a message they're trying to send about the normal people.
I can sympathize with you, Austin. I can see where there's a limit at which your credulity gets stretched a little bit. Like, how many times can Sam make it out of scenarios like this, and they're probably running up against the limits of that with me too at this point. I will say though, I think it's also a nice contrast to look at. We sort of expect cowardice from Sam, and he obviously doesn't act with conventional bravery and heroism, but neither does he act kind of like Slint or someone, who has all this bravado and is ostensibly this military leader or leader of the police or whatever it is that he was doing in Westeros. I can't remember what the title was. Caleb named it earlier. But anyway, this supposed tough guy, right, who really, pees down his leg and goes and hides in a closet when everything goes down. Sam doesn't become somebody he's not, but neither does he really panic. And I think that like that's part of like what's redeeming about Sam too, is that he's able to keep his wits about him and go ahead and grab. He at least grabs for the crossbow and fires it, and maybe it's a lucky shot, right? But he doesn't. I think if Slint had been there, he would have just gotten his head knocked off, right? And that's something different about. I don't know. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why Sam survives too, is because he sort of keeps his wits about him, even if he doesn't miraculously turn into Jon Snow. He manages to, I don't know, not just.
He's not a total bubbling idiot. Like, he is actually really clever and really smart. He's not sophisticated. I mean, he doesn't have any finesse. He's awkward. He's not the most outspoken person. So he lacks all those qualities. But to get his credit, he's clever and he's smart, and
I think
he is at least skilled enough to know how to work a bow. Like, it's not like he's like, you hand him a bow and he's like, what do I do with this? He knows what he's doing to some extent.
I think it's interesting, sort of. I guess a parallel or whatever. He takes Gilly to the closet to protect her, keep her safe, and then the guy that you expect to be kind of a coward says, "I'm a man of the Night's Watch. I have to go and fight." And then moments later, we see a man who claims to have all this bravery and leadership runs to the same closet to hide in fear because he's a coward. It's the same location. Like, it's just interesting that it's the same location that happens at. And that's just kind of interesting.
I do want to correct myself a little bit. I said Sam never really just like cowers. He did do that when they saw the White Walkers, didn't he? He did just.
That's what I was going to say.
Maybe that shows some of his growth too, though. That he went from that to now being at least, building up to the White Walker scene where he was still super scared but managed to luck out with the dragon glass, and then he seemed more poised than ever for Sam, obviously, but he seemed more poised than ever in this episode. So maybe there is, Caleb, you asked earlier on in the podcast, are there some like really moments where something's developing for Sam? Maybe there's a little bit of a growth there. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear what you guys think about that.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that motivation comes from, again, where what he was talking about in his speech, where he feels like he's actually important now. There's a reason for him to survive. There's a reason for him to fight, and it's Gilly for him. He's found this person that he cares about and he loves, and if he's gone, no one's going to protect her, and it's up to him to be the protector. He's found usefulness in being her sort of protector because, like you said, he's a coward. There's no reason for him to live when he first sees the White Walkers. Then he's with Gilly, and so he has to protect her. And then he's like, okay, I'm useful in this, and then in this, like you said, we see him being as, he doesn't run at all. He, stands up and he fights, and he's running up and down, and even telling, the little potato farmer to stand up and fight and, do these things. And so we do see that growth, and it comes from this fact that he does find himself to be useful, and where at one point he did not, and it's from this connection that he has with Gilly.
Well, yeah, and I think, I think he has arc to some extent, because when you mentioned thinking back to that scene where he does kind of cower from the White Walkers, I also think back, he was pretty dang pathetic in the first season when all the guys are just beating him up in the yard, and he's like, please don't hit me, he was pretty dang pathetic.
He wouldn't even swing the sword.
Yeah, he wouldn't even swing the sword back. But I think Gilly is definitely a big motor. I think Stoll's right. It's definitely Gilly is a big reason for him finding this. He actually feels like he has a reason to stick up for himself, for one, and it's given him more confidence. And honestly, even though, he did leave the dagger, he did kind of kill a White Walker, and that's got to like boost your confidence a little bit, right? You just killed this epic thing that none of those other guys have done, right? None of them. I mean, so I think he's slowly but surely developed little bits of confidence along the way. And no, he's not like, I don't think he's ever going to be like an epic leader or anything like that. But I do think he is kind of growing into his own in a way.
It's an interesting point you make about Gilly because, and I totally agree with you, because in a lot of ways, and also in complete opposite ways, that's what Ygritte had done for Jon Snow. She empowered him, not because she needed his help, but really Jon Snow kind of needed her help, or her help, and I don't think Jon Snow would have been the leader or the person he is now had he never met Ygritte.
No, she's key in who he is. She gave him confidence again, gave him more confidence, and in a sense, that innocence and naivety he has was, lost with her. Anyway, I don't know. I just think Sam is kind of growing to some extent and developing, just not in ways that are quite maybe not super obvious to surface level. Sure, it may not look like much, but I think he's come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go ahead and move on. I think this episode is going to run a little short. So we already talked about the death of Ygritte. Did you guys? Did we mention the? What did you guys think about the potato kid being the one who killed her?
I think it was really cheesy. Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead, Austin.
I was just gonna say, I don't have anything really on like. It was like justice and revenge in some ways, but it was really cheesy how he kind of nods afterwards, and the internet has kind of run wild with that. If you look it up, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that feels like it's meme ready, like to seize on. No, I agree. That was one of the cornier moments, and weirdly, I felt like this episode had a few of those when Game of Thrones doesn't typically have any of those. You sort of knew that was coming when he's spared by the Finns early on.
Yeah. And
he ends up at Castle Black. There's going to be some kind of retribution type moment that he's going to have, and I didn't quite know that it would be her, but I thought maybe he would be the one that killed. What's the head Finn? The one
Stir, whatever his name is.
I thought it would be Steer, and then of course it ends up being her. And it was her after all, though, who shot one of his parents, right?
She shot her dad, who was telling that great story about him and his mom that one time, which I thought again that was funny. It was almost a little too much though. Even that scene from several episodes ago, and the whole little arc was kind of corny. I thought a little bit, honestly.
A point about Ygritte though, before we move on to the top of the wall, because I think that's where you're heading.
Yeah.
That whole group of wildlings had one archer, one person who could kill people from a range.
But it was a freaking giant. But it was a freaking giant, man. Oh, you're talking about Ygritte, sorry.
Yeah, Ygritte. No one thought to take her out earlier. She killed like 20 people. We were like, man, if we got rid of this archer, things would be a lot easier. It was really ridiculous.
Hey, listen, how many people did Legolas kill before I took him down? Oh wait, they didn't take him down.
That's right, because Legolas is a badass.
And again, typical Hollywood semantics there.
But I just like it. I mean, if I'm sitting there and I'm the Men of the Night's Watch, and she's shot down at least 10 people now by herself, I think, oh, maybe I should get rid of her. She's causing a lot of problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, Pip tried to get rid of her and see how that turned out. But yeah, you would think like Alistair Thorne would be like, hey, there's an archer, or someone kill her, or something, something like that.
There's one archer there. It's not like they had a whole army of them. I don't know. Anyway, we can move on. I just wanted to make that point real fast.
Gotcha. Well, on top of the wall, we had some pretty awesome stuff. I'll hit on pretty quick. We already talked about Janos Slynt, A, being in denial, B, being a coward for going and running in a closet, and C, what a freaking moron. Someone walks up, oh, hey, he wants you downstairs, and, and he's like the only officer up top, and I guess he was so in shock by the giants, he's just like, oh, okay, I'll go down there. I don't know, it just was weird.
I think he's supposed to be just paralyzed by fear, right? I mean, that's the sense I got, is that he's so ill-equipped to be a soldier, in spite of the fact that that's like what he's been his whole life, presumably, but always in the kind of comfort of King's Landing, right?
Right.
That when it finally gets into a real battle, he's the kind of person that can't deal with crisis and becomes paralyzed with fear and sort of completely ineffectual, and he's half out of his mind and with fear and not knowing what to do and just completely overwhelmed, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's funny that both John and Ed both end up being pretty epic up top while he just kind of runs away. Mm-hmm. Kind of funny foil there, and I wonder what they're going to end up doing with that since we didn't see. I mean, he didn't there weren't any consequences for him in this episode, but I'm wondering if we might see that next episode or next season maybe. But I thought it was pretty cool. So Jon takes command, bunch of epic fire arrows because that's what we like to see. I thought there was a really funny line, again, kind of corny but kind of funny, was when he's like, "Yeah, it'll take them a day to climb the wall," but they're like, "I think they're in a bigger hurry than you were," type of thing. Fight the giants. Giant has the epic arrow, which, by the way, when that landed, first off, it was epic when it hit the guy, but it was crazy when he landed. I just kept thinking of the Mortal Kombat spike pit, the fatality pit.
You finally made a video game reference that I actually know, Caleb. That one's old enough that I get it.
He gets all. It's a classic. What can I say? Can't go on with that.
There was this whole everything from the top of the wall was just fantastic, and I never really fully appreciated how difficult it would be for an army to try to get over the wall or through the tunnel. And when we talked about the idea that 100 people could hold off 100,000, I always dismissed it as just completely absurd. But then you see, like, the archers can't make the arrows up to the wall, except for the giants, of course. And every time they get close to the wall, they get barrels of exploding, oil and gunpowder dropped on them. And you see all these, like, defenses, and you really start to realize how massive a feat this is for Mance Rayder, even if there's only 100 people on the wall.
Right.
Well, I kept thinking too, also, gosh, if they really had done what Jon Snow said, and like blocked all of the tunnels or whatever, I don't know that they would. I mean, it would have been pretty easy to defend the wall almost.
Right.
Given what all you just said. So.
Yeah, I'm just a bunch of dudes climbing the wall would be the only way over it, really.
Yeah.
But even then, the coolest castle defense weapon I've ever seen totally prevents that, and that's the scythe. That thing,
yes, that was crazy.
Down across the wall was probably the most unique thing I've ever seen from like a kind of a castle defense perspective, and that was probably my favorite part of the whole episode. Actually,
no, that was pretty great.
It was a silly little gimmicky thing, but it was just very, very cool.
No, I'm with you, and because I just was like so shocked. I was like, "What is he?" He's like, "Bring out the scythe." I was like, "What is he talking about?" And you're like, "Oh, holy crap, that's the scythe!" I mean, you'd never get up the wall then, because he's like, then he says, "Reel it back in." I'm like, "Wait, you can do that?" I thought at first maybe it's
more than once.
One? No, you can do it more than one time. Holy crap!
Well, we're talking about.
I don't know about you guys, but I
don't
know. I found myself sort of thinking like two different sort of things. First, like they gave up the wildlings, that is, gave up pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Is my first thing, and then two was like, was this it? You just I thought like surely you had a better plan coming into this. Like we're gonna throw the giants and we're gonna get through the gate and we're gonna climb the wall. Like I don't know. I guess feel like it was sort of.
Daniel, did you not watch the last 5 minutes of the episode?
I watched the last 5 minutes of the episode.
Because Jon Snow specifically says this was all for them to like.
Yeah,
to test.
I know, but I feel like you throw more at it. I don't know.
You have 100. You could have a better test.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a more epic test because it would have been more epic for TV. So
and the test almost did it. Like it almost broke through with just like 20 guys and 2 giants, almost knocked the whole wall down.
I don't know. I just thought it was sort of a. I mean, maybe they weren't really trying to attempt it. I don't know. I guess Jon has a point. They're just sort of testing it. I don't know. I thought that they could have tested it better. I guess I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always thought it was intended to be a first wave. I didn't think this was like they weren't all in. They were just. I mean,
and it was a show of force too. I mean, we brought the whole army out and all yelled real loudly and stuff just to hopefully try to rattle the Night's Watchmen, which was actually pretty effective. A lot of them were quite scared. Pip, in particular, like basically starts to lose it before Sam says something to him.
But you just...
Thor has to try really hard to regain all their composure because they're dropping the barrels too early and not listening to his commands. I mean, it was an effective scare tactic in that way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's true, but I feel like you waste some of your the Finns. That entire group is just gone now. Like,
yeah, I think that to your argument, I think that's probably the best point right there. If you're just testing the defenses, why would you waste the guys you have behind the wall?
Like Tormund's the only one that didn't die, and he's a captive. Like. I don't know, like that entire group, like, did you just like, they're just wasted. I don't know. I feel like that's sort of a weak. Like that's not really the smartest plan, I guess.
Unless Mance Rayner has an ulterior plan.
Yes, that's fair, I guess.
He's never seemed that smart to me. I don't know. None of his
he's-
moves have seemed that amazing yet. Yeah, and to be fair, he's been on screen for like a minute total, ever. But I don't know. Just having a giant army is not what's going to get you through the wall.
Right. Mark, you were going to say something I missed a couple minutes ago.
I've lost it, Caleb. If I was, it's gone.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, cool. Well, yeah. So all the stuff on top of the wall I thought was probably pretty epic, and that was where I felt like I mean, yeah, the stuff on the ground was pretty cool too, but I don't know. I felt more epic up top. It was more captivating, I guess. So what did you guys make of the end? So Tormund's left alive, thank God. He was like, listen, honestly, I didn't really care about very many people in this battle except for Tormund. I'm like, man, Tormund better not go down because I don't know, he's awesome. We don't know this guy at all. It's just that big red beard. I don't know. I was like, man, he better not go down. Ygritte, I was like, oh, yeah, what?
He's going to forever tell the story about how he used to be an adventurer until he took an arrow to the knee.
Nice. Yes, true story. Should have thrown you off that top of that wall, boy. And then Jon Snow replies the very cliche but still kind of awesome.
Yeah, you should.
You should have.
I mean, so we could take stock at the end here of who we have left, right? You have Slynt, who's probably lost all credibility at this point. Jon Snow walks out the gate, presumably to try to talk Mance Rayder down and come up with some sort of bargain. What do we think about Alistair Thornton? Is he alive?
That's alive. I took it that he was injured but alive.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I took it as well.
And just to clarify, I may be wrong, but I thought that Jon was going under that pretense to sort of negotiate something, but that really he's on a like a assassin mission. Like he wants to decapitate their forces by going in under that guise, but really he's going to be there to kill Mance Rayder.
Right.
Isn't that what he said to him?
Yeah, that's kind of picked up on. He's going to try and act as the leader of the Night's Watch, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, no, I thought he was going to act as if he was going to negotiate with Mance, but then use that as an opportunity to kill Mance.
Oh yeah. That's definitely the vibe I got. The vibe I got off that because he said,
Which sounds like a suicide mission, by the way. Like he might succeed. He might succeed in killing Mance, but then there's all those men right there. Like how's he gonna get out of
it?
there?
Hey, I just killed your leader.
That's what Sam says, right? It'll be a slow death.
Right.
So.
Unless it's the wildlings, and I thought, what if Jon kills the wildling king, and the wildlings seem to value strength quite a bit. So what if I don't know. This is kind of stretch right out there. What if he kills Mance and he therefore gains respect from the wildlings? Maybe. I don't know.
I feel like Jon Snow's not going anywhere, so there's got to be some way that he survives. There are only a few characters, and again, this is probably not a very safe assumption on my part, but there are certain Game of Thrones characters that I feel like are safe, and Jon Snow feels like one of them.
Yeah.
So maybe that's bad confidence, but I feel like, I don't know if it's going to be that killed, but there's going to be some way that what Sam says is going to happen and what Jon fully expects to happen isn't what's going to happen because somehow Jon's going to make it out. That's my sense, if that's kind of what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how he makes it out. I had always thought from a while back that he would eventually be the leader of the Wildling army. I said it before. I don't even know how that would actually take place at this point. But back when he first met Mance Rayder, that's what I had kind of taken from it.
Yeah, I think
probably not really a possibility much anymore. I don't know how he makes it out of this. I guess I too believe that he will live, but I thought that about an Oberyn. So what do I know?
Ooh, too soon. I think it's a great little segue. We'll go ahead. You guys have anything else you'd like to say about this episode before we wrap up the analysis here?
Caleb, I don't know if you want to do this. Do you want to make comparisons or no? If we don't, we don't have time.
Well, okay. So we'll hit it light. We'll do a light comparison.
I was just gonna say I do think that book readers are going to be more unsatisfied than non-book readers, I felt like. But it was interesting that both Austin and Mark were kind of on the same side as us. But from my, at least it seemed like from my experience, the book readers seemed to be a little more not satisfied with the way that it ended and sort of played out, rather from the non-book readers, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I was actually half expecting probably Austin or Mark to be a little more, or Austin especially, just to be a little more excited about the episode. I'm kind of glad you're not, because that means we're on the same page. But I do know there are even some critics out there who hadn't read the books. People who haven't read the books tend to be a lot more behind this episode than. No, I don't know if they're going to say it's the best episode of the show or anything like that, but generally speaking, we're pretty bombed for this episode. And I when it finished, I was like, well, that was really cool, but I definitely didn't. Like I said, I felt like there should have been more.
Yeah, I mean that's how I felt. It was cool, and I was actually very excited going into it. I didn't have my usual experience. I was watching this on the computer screen and stuff, and so maybe that kind of affected my kind of look at it. But overall, it was just good. It was a good episode. It was exciting. It was fun. I don't know how it played out in the books, but that's kind of how I felt about it.
We're not going to
completely talk about it yet. But
that's fine. The thing is, I until I saw the preview for next week, I had assumed as soon as Jon Snow stepped out of that gate, we weren't going to see him again for, I don't know, a couple seasons or something. I don't know why. I just had that feeling that it felt so final with that door closing behind him. Like, he's gone for a while, and we're not going to hear from him for quite some time, because that's what ends up happening to everyone who goes out that gate.
I thought that too, Austin. I thought, well, I guess this is it for the Wall for season 4. We'll pick up at the Wall in season 5. But then, do we talk about the next one in this at all?
Yeah, we're about. Yeah, I want to head into that myself.
Well, the next one foiled that theory for me, because it shows Jon Snow at least in the next one that I watched. It sounds to me like they are going to pick up his story in the next episode. I think we would move back to King's Landing and Tyrion and everybody else, but it sounds like we probably are going to see more from the Wall, at least if I interpreted the next one right.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and just go all in on the next episode. That concludes our review of the Watchers on the Wall. We're going to go ahead and pre-hash next week's episode, The Children. Okay, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. Because that next on, definitely, we did see Jon, and we saw Mance even. So, but yeah, there have been several storylines that I'm thinking we might or might not go back to that also seem like we might have wrapped. And I'm thinking specifically of the Sansa Littlefinger stuff. I feel like that's wrapped for the season. I feel like the Bolton stuff is wrapped for the season. And then I thought I was with you too. Like it faded to white, like we weren't going to see him again. And then, I mean, like he's going to be in next week. I don't know. I really hope that the emphasis is on the Tyrion stuff, but I'll be honest, guys.
We're not going to hear about Tyrion next week. No, I mean we'll check in with it, but that's not going to resolve. There's no way.
You don't think it resolves?
No, that drags out to next season, and I'm going to be disappointed when it does.
I know. I just don't see that. If Game of Thrones does that, I will be legitimately upset. Not even for like adaptive book to TV adaptation, but because it wouldn't. Every season of the show feels complete. And yes, episode 10 typically is more of a transition episode than a climax episode, but it still feels complete. Like when you get to the end of season 1, you feel like, okay, that was Ned's story, that's done. Season 2, the Battle of Blackwater, Tyrion, Hand of the King, and various other storylines, they all feel like they're wrapped and they're setting up for what comes next.
I'll put it this way:
I feel like that storyline has to resolve. That storyline has to resolve. Something has to happen. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, well, like, because Tyrion's whole storyline has been building up to the trial by combat and his execution.
If they are going to kill him, it will not happen next episode. That's how I feel. Not in episode 10. They're not going to do it there. So
there's just a lot of loose narrative threads, and this is a point I've made about this series several times as a television series. When you have this large of an ensemble cast with this many narrative threads to twist together in an amazing tapestry, which Martin is obviously highly skilled at, it's a lot easier to do in a bunch of 800, 900-page novels than it is to do in television series. And one of the things I worry about with Game of Thrones is with such a sprawling, fictitious world and so many really amazing narrative threads, I feel like some of them have to get clipped, at least if not within a series, within certain seasons. And so, I mean, there's interesting things happening with the Hound and Arya. There's interesting things happening with the Boltons. There's interesting things happening with Sansa and Littlefinger, with Tyrion. Even what about Tywin and Cersei and these others that we've kind of dropped for a while that were, important in the early part of the season. There's just so much, it seems like, to wrap up in one episode. More, and a lot of things of substance, like Tyrion, for instance, that it feels like this is going to be. I just have a hard time seeing it happening. Feeling like there's the kind of closure, Caleb, you're talking about has happened in season past, and I agree with you that we've had that, like a kind of closure and then a forecasting of other things, but that kind of feeling of satisfaction. I just don't know how they can give it as sprawling as the scope has gotten in this season.
Yeah, no, and I think you guys are both definitely on. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe we don't. The end of book 3. I've never one of the guy who's constantly drawing comparisons, but there was certainly, and it's not that the show is going to be bad if it doesn't do this, but I remember specifically thinking when I finished that book, I was like, wow. I mean, the story wasn't over, but there was a sense of like completion, like all these threads had wrapped up from season.
I don't think there was
honestly the whole series up to that point. They definitely showed a. But I mean, like I guess I would say is like this is the end of this is the end of book 3. Certain storylines, if they don't resolve, will literally be the point where I'll actually start crapping on the show for dragging stuff out, because like there's certain things that have to happen, and I think you're right. I mean, if it's going to resolve following like a more traditional thread, it has to happen.
I think they could do. They could do a Purple Wedding type thing. They could drag it out to next season.
No, Purple Wedding wasn't. Purple Wedding was not dragged out till next season. It was right where it needed to be.
I'm saying, but you said it would be a major event happen in the beginning of the season, and we would get to see how it plays out and how that affects everything else. Yeah, that's where I think they might go with it. That's all.
You think? I guess the question is, you think it's going to end on several? I mean, like obviously, there's always a little bit of a cliffhanger because you don't know exactly what's going to happen next. But do you think
Tyrion is their cliffhanger?
Okay.
See,
they're gonna hint at it. They're gonna build up to it, and then they're gonna stop in next season.
I think you could be right, Austin. Tyrion could be the thread that's left the loosest. I think they also could potentially close Tyrion, though. But even if they close Tyrion somehow, there's still so many other threads that are gonna. I don't think we can get the kind of closure in a season finale that we're used to with the series so far.
Right.
It may or may not be Tyrion, from my perspective. I think Austin could be right, but I'm
not
sold on the theory as him. But no matter what, I don't think, Caleb, that we can. I just can't foresee us getting the kind of closure that I feel like we are associated with the finales of 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
I think that's fair too, but I do agree with Caleb. I feel like that Tyrion's storyline has been sort of the headliner of the storylines this season, so I feel like that's the one that you have to make sure that you do at least wrap up on some sort of level. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
I hope they do. Tyrion's who I always want to see.
Right.
And I don't want to say like one storyline is like better or worse than the other one or anything like that, but I feel like that there's been a lot of focus on his storyline this particular season.
Well, for instance,
and like a lot of things have happened because of it, so I feel like that's the one that they've got to at least finish because it's been more of the bigger storylines this season.
Well, and even like some of these characters, I mean, even like with the ones I mentioned, they're in a place where it feels like they could probably go further, but they don't need to. I just feel like that one specifically really needs to wrap up. I would be disappointed.
Even if you don't go farther with, let's say, Arya or Sansa, because I agree with you, they're kind of at a stopping point. But you said it earlier, they typically get to that stopping point in like the penultimate episode, and then in the last episode, we start to preview where they're going to be next time. Like there's a hint at that. And to me, if you're going to give screen time to all these different hints, like that's all eating up time. This goes back to the Austin. Did you say earlier that we get an extended episode?
It looks like, according to one of our listeners chimed in, said it's going to be 66 minutes long.
Well, that's not that extended. That's a little bit extended, but not that much, right?
No, that's like an extra.
Enough for an extra scene, yeah.
Extra 10 minutes.
Well, it's actually 16 minutes longer than last week's episode. This I believe the Watchers on the Wall were actually only a 50-minute episode.
It was a shorter episode. Yeah. Either way, it's still.
It's not
but on average,
extended, but yeah.
On average, it's probably about 10 minutes longer.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. That's a significant increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and okay.
Now we saw in kind of moving on beyond that, unless you wanted to say something to that.
No, go ahead.
We saw a clip of Jon Snow, and presumably with the Wildling army, and then there's a battle, which could be one of two things, I think. One, either the wildlings are upset and there's like basically a civil war with them, or what I'm really hoping it is Stannis finally fulfills what he says he was going to do and shows up. Probably not, but it'd be cool to have Stannis' army finally do something of value, and show up north of the wall for some reason. I don't know how he would even get up there.
That's an interesting. That's interesting. The last place we saw Stannis was Bravos, correct?
Right. Yeah, they're both in Bravos, which I mean,
That's
honestly,
a long way away.
Yeah, that is. But I'll give you this, and I think that character we definitely need to check in with the next episode because we haven't seen either of them. It was like episode what?
I would say Stannis has been dropped for a long time. We need at least a kind of a hint, just a touch back in. Where is he right now?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
He was
Just so we
supposed
know
to be getting an army and ships and then going to the wall. That was his plan. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and then we saw a little bit of stuff with Tyrion and Cersei and Tywin, obviously. Was there anything I was missing? It's pretty quick. Where did you? Bran. Bran. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Bran and Hodor and them, and it looks like they might have made it to the Weirwood tree.
Right. They were in the next
could have been
one.
Vision. Yeah. The tree was there too. I don't know if that means they made it or if it's in their vision, but it's there. They finally got somewhere.
Well, there are even little small threads like Brienne and Podrick, and I mean, there's so many little things. And that's the one that they could let loose, granted, and probably be okay. But what I mean is, there's just so many right now. I just feel like there's a lot to have to pick and choose from and prioritize, and to give us closure is going to be a challenge.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. Because I mean, if you think about it, if you think about everything, if every one of these threads was touched on, and they've even done that before. I don't think they will this next episode, but if they went through every storyline and checked in with them for 5 minutes, even, that would be much longer than the 66 minutes. Just because, like you said, there's gonna be at least a dozen storylines probably going on right now that we've followed to some extent. We're close to it anyway. So yeah, I mean, I think you're going to be picky and choosing. There's a lot, and I honestly, I'm really with you. I'm really very, very curious to see how they wrap this up, knowing.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot to wrap up. Way
Yeah,
more so than they have ever had in past seasons.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have anything else you want to say about next week's episode? All right. All right. Hey, thank you, live viewers, for the few of you that tuned in today. I just want to remind all our listeners that you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook.com/CastBeyondTheWall, or you can find us on Twitter at @cast_beyond_GOT. Or if you're watching us on YouTube right now, you can hit the little subscribe button right there. And I think the most prevalent way, and the way I hope that you guys really, really support us, is by getting on iTunes and subscribing or giving us a rating. Give us one star if we're terrible. We suck. We don't know what we're talking about. We're a bunch of idiots babbling about nothing. Or give us 5 stars if you think we're like the most analytical Game of Thrones geniuses out there. I don't care. Just give us a rating. Let us know what you think. We'd really appreciate that. And I really hope you guys can support the show that way. Actually, I'll edit around this. A question I had concerning next week's episode: did you guys think the title "The Children" was significant at all?
The what? I'm sorry, say that again.
The title of the episode, "The Children." Did you find any significance in that at all?
I mean, I'm sure there will be significance, which has made appearance in the show, like when we actually watch it. But I mean, I guess the most obvious thing is it's the Lannister children. But I'm sure it's, as with most of these titles like that, it's going to be layered. There's going to have multiple meanings and things. So.
Except for episode 8.
Yes, except for that one. There was no layering.
No layers of that one at all. All right, everybody. Well, that'll be a show. We'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Mark, for taking time out of your evening to hop on and chat with us. We always love talking Game of Thrones with you.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Until next time, you can go ahead and check us out. Check us out next week when we review. Check us out next week when we review The Children and give Game of Thrones a grand send off for the season. All right, we're good.
All right.